G77 and China Summit is on the way in Havana, where leaders from the Global South get together on a historic occasion to discuss world present issues and possible solutions. In the United States, Autoworkers want to strike on Friday for an indefinite period. And the North Korean leader Kim Jong Un on Friday toured to F4 plans as part of his Russia tour. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Rosabal from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The summit of the Group of 77 on China, convened by Cuba, begins today in Havana, focusing on current development challenges, the role of science, technology, and innovation. The leader of the Cuban Revolution, Raúl Castro, is present at the opening day of the G77 and China Summit being held at the Havana Convention Palace. The meeting is attended by more than 100 delegations from the member countries of the bloc and officials from international organizations who will discuss political and economic issues of relevance for developing nations. The president of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel, and the country that holds this year and the pro tempore presidency of this association, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, opened the discussion in the island's capital. In his opening speech at the summit of the Group of 77 and China, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel referred to issues such as climate change and its consequences, the democratization of international relations among nations, and the poverty condition of the southern people.
The peoples of the South are the ones that have more poverty, hunger, misery, death for curable diseases, illiteracy, human displacements, and other consequences of underdevelopment. Many of our nations are called poor when in fact they should be called impoverished nations. And we have to revert that condition in which we have been stuck as a result of colonial centuries of dependence, because the South can no longer cope with these unfortunate issues. Those who raise cities out of the blood and sweat of the nations of the South are suffering already, and they will suffer more in the future, the consequence of economic imbalances that were the result of plunder. We are traveling on the same boat, although some are VIP passengers and others are their servants.
Cuba's President Miguel Díaz-Canel referred to the patterns imposed by developed countries of the brain stealing they exercise on the South.
Reality is a tendency to patent everything, including life forms, and this is a practice that swells the coffers of large transnational corporations in the most powerful economies and makes the remaining economies more fragile. The rampant process of privatization of knowledge contributes to widening the gap and limits access to development. Patents are there's pressure on developing countries to introduce laws to protect intellectual property rights, while conveniently forgetting that many industrialized countries develop precisely by pirating products and technology outside their geographic borders, particularly in today's developing countries. Patent applications continue to increase, and even in the midst of the pandemic in 2020, up by 1.5% and jumped in 2021 3.6% growth.
And during his speech at the start of the G77 and China Summit, and Secretary General Antonio Guterres acknowledged the failure of global frameworks and systems to deal with the current global crisis.
In the last decades, their countries have brought many people out of poverty, and the United Nations has been seeking global solutions and promoting solidarity. But now we are facing a number of world crises. Poverty is increasing. Hunger is greater. Prices have soared. And climatic disasters are increasingly more frequent. The systems and the global frameworks have failed. The conclusion is clear. The world is failing the developing countries.
We go back to the summit in Havana, where Gladys Quesada is now ready to bring us the latest updates of the G77 and China Summit, which has already kicked off. Tell us, Gladys, what is the latest news?
Well, thanks, Adineb, for this new report for you and for TeleSUR English and from the South. So far this morning, in this second half of the remarks and the speakers that are addressing the summit and the gathering, well, we had the presence of the president of Comoros, Zalia Zoumani, who is also the president of the African Union, one of the main blocs in that continent. In that occasion, in his remarks, the president of Comoros was really stressing regarding the unity and the paramount necessity of a global gathering and the global South to come together to face the global challenges of today. He also was praising China's initiatives to make more viable the digital currencies and the digital economy, given today's turn of the finance and the trade markets that are weaponizing the dollar and that are using local currencies against their own peoples, against the undeveloped countries, and also against those who do not pledge to the hegemonism of the West. Also, Ralph Gonsalves, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, was insisting on the need of a strong unity among the global nations in the South and also the Caribbean as a zone and as a stronghold to face the imperialism and to take a stand against hegemonism and against the interference of the Western powers. And also Li Zi, the representative of China, was stressing one idea that was really interesting in this summit, is that China is one of the most developed countries in the world, if not the second biggest economy. And also he was saying that China is always going to be on the side of the underdeveloped countries. It's always going to be a friend of the poor and is going to be always part of the global South. That is a great idea that shows that an economic growth and economic prosperity is not just the only way to achieve greatness, and also those who have sustainable development can help those who are still in the race to get to that point. Also, China said it supports the next summit of the South to be held in January in 2024 in Kampala, Uganda, and said that Uganda deserves, as an African country, to be the summit, or to be, I beg your pardon, to be the main venue for this event. Also, one of the latest and most important remarks of this summit is that of the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro Moros. Let's recall something very important regarding this, this address. In this case, Maduro is coming back from China, as he had this almost a long week visit to that Asian nation, to the Asian giant. And he signed 31 cooperation agreements. He found the new technology advances in China, and also he shared some arguments and some guidelines of his economy regarding construction, regarding economy, finance, trade, education. So President Nicolás Maduro Moros came to this summit with other perspective regarding cooperation, North-South cooperation, and how the different regions of the world can come together and rejoin and also find the cooperative and the comparative advantages of each one of them to cooperate and make the world different. Also, one of the main topics is this: sustainable development, innovation, technology, but on behalf of the peoples of the world. Not only to weaponize technology, not only to weaponize the currencies, but to find alternatives and also strategies to overcome today's hegemony and also to achieve that new world that we are all finding and we all want to find.
And what will be the central focus of the summit?
Well, one of the main topics I have been hearing, and you can find in other remarks, is not only solidarity, is to find action in this solidarity, is to strategize, but also to take that into action, put that into motion, all the will, because one of the main topics that was referred in the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister, Ralph Gonsalves, is not just to say, it's not just to find the words, it's only to do the talk and find the walk, because as he was saying, when there is a will, there is a way to find the solutions from the Global South. One of the main topics also is that the Global South has not only the potential to find its own solutions, because the Global South is a decision-making bloc. Also, the Global South has the potential to find the resources, to find the ways, and to find the infrastructure needed to overcome today's liabilities and today's problems in the economy and the geopolitics. And also, as we know, this is a summit that is coming in a new context in the geopolitics. It is coming after a reshaping of Africa. It's coming after a reshaping of the global power balance, given the conflict in Ukraine, given the new energy trade and energy markets, and the new composition of the financial trade and markets also, and the food changes that are also reshaping the world. So also I think that those are the main topics of the summit, and also solidarity, cooperation, and bolstering and enhancing all the ties between the Global South.
Thank you, Gladys Quesada, for your information. Reporting from the summit of the Group of 77 held in Havana.
Thanks to you, Adam, and from the South.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, new dates, and more. Our study is coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. Social organizations and left-wing parties marched against the promotion of ultra-liberal Argentinian presidential candidate Javier Milei. On Thursday afternoon, thousands of people marched in downtown Buenos Aires city against the economic adjustment policies demanded by the International Monetary Fund and Milei's speeches against public health and education systems. The mobilization was held as part of the national debt struggle and had rebels in different cities of the country. Among all the controversies, the Libertarian Javier Milei received the highest number of votes in primary elections, and his speech promotes the elimination of central banking, dollarization, and the elimination of education and health care as universal rights guaranteed by the state. Brazil Federation of Petroleum Workers Union is demanding justice for the millions of job losses caused by the Operation Car Wash anti-corruption investigation, which was recently ruled fraudulent by Brazil's Supreme Court. In Pernambuco, our correspondent Brian Meyer has more details. Let's watch.
After the Supreme Court put the final nail in the coffin of the now disgraced Operation Car Wash investigation last week by annulling as fraudulent all evidence collected from Odebrecht Construction Company, Brazil's National Federation of Petroleum Workers Unions, FUPE, is demanding justice for all of the workers who lost their jobs.
I worked at Abreu de Lima refinery as a driver. But in 2016, Operation Car Wash came, and the construction of the second refinery unit was halted and thousands of people were fired. I have been working as an app driver ever since.
Before the 2016 coup, Brazil was on the verge of becoming self-sufficient in gasoline production. Then President Michel Temer used Operation Car Wash as an excuse to privatize refineries and halt construction of a second refinery in Abreu de Lima. Now Brazil is importing around $11 billion a year in gasoline refined from its own petroleum.
The entire Petrobras system was damaged by the Operation Car Wash. One proven goal of Car Wash, which was sponsored primarily by the United States, was to dismantle Brazil's oil refining capacity. When Brazil became self-sufficient in petroleum in 2008, they began to worry that Brazil would become a major oil-producing power.
The end result of the economic sabotage waged against Brazil's National Development Plan by the Operation Car Wash Task Force's illegal collaboration with the U.S. Department of Justice was millions of unemployed and over 20 million Brazilians falling below the poverty line.
In 2021, the S Institute released a study showing that the Operation Car Wash resulted in 4.4 million job losses in Brazil. Mainly in the oil and gas sector, and it's the forced bankruptcy of the largest civil construction companies.
This week, President Lula announced that Petrobras will finally finish building its second refinery in Abreu e Lima. Brian Mir, TeleSUR, Suape, Pernambuco.
In the United States, Autoworkers went on strike indefinitely on Friday in the absence of an agreement to sign a new collective bargaining deal. The strike was initiated by thousands of workers at the three assembly plants of General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis, united in the union United Auto Workers. It is the first time in history that factories of the so-called B3 of Detroit, as the three companies are known, have gone on strike simultaneously. Union President Van Fein announced at 11 p.m. local time on Thursday that the first to go on strike as part of the collective strike would be about 30,500 workers at assembly plants in Westville, Toledo, and Michigan, who are rallying at the company's gates.
Negotiators, maximum leverage and flexibility in bargaining. And if we need to go all out, we will. Everything is on the table. You are ready to join the stand-up strike at a moment's notice.
We continue in the United States that Hunter Biden, the president's son, was indicted on Thursday on 3 charges related to the purchase and possession of weapons, which is illegal when dealing with a person with an addiction. According to the indictment, in 2018, Hunter Biden purchased a handgun and lied to the seller by giving him a certificate stating that he was not a illicit user or addicted to narcotics, stimulants, or other controlled substances. He is also charged with a third crime of possessing a firearm knowing that it was illegal because of his addictions. The Justice Department stated and released that, if convicted on all 3 charges, President Joe Biden's son could receive a maximum of 25 years in prison. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at TeleSUR English, you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away.
This September 15 and 16, Cuba celebrates the Summit of Heads of State.
Welcome back. North Korean leader Kim Jong Un on Friday toured 2 FTS plants in eastern Russia. Accompanied by the Deputy Prime Minister and head of the Russian Industry and Trade, Denis Manturov, Kim visited an industrial plant of the Komsomolsk Amur aviation plant, where the assembly of Su-35 and Su-57 fighter jets is being carried out. The North Korean leader was also able to see the industrial facilities of another aerospace company, Yakolev, where some parts of the fuselage and wing components of SJ-100 commercial aircraft are manufactured. This is Kim's second visit to Russia. During the first in April 2019. He merely visited the city of Vladivostok and met with the Russian president on the campus of the Far Eastern Federal University. The main border crossing point between Pakistan and Afghanistan, the Torkan crossing, reopened on Friday after 9 days of closure due to a series of clashes between security forces of both countries. Pakistani authorities reported that the crossing was reopened at 8 a.m. for pedestrians and at 9 a.m. for commercial transport. According to Pakistan's version, the key crossing was closed on September 6th last because Pakistan agents complained about the construction of a checkpoint on the Afghan side, and the Taliban government security forces responded with gunfire. The Dorkan border crossing, which accounts for 65% of the traffic between the two countries, has been closed several times in the past, causing severe hardship to travelers and loss of business associated with the movement of goods. The delegation of the government negotiator left Yemen on Thursday to restart peace talks in Saudi Arabia. The plane carrying the Houthi negotiators and the Yemeni mediators took off from Havana International Airport on Thursday afternoon. Earlier, the head of the Houthi political council, Mahdi al-Mashad, said they were on their way to write in response to Yemeni mediation. Negotiations seek to resume a truce between the Saudi Arabian-backed Yemeni government and the Houthis of the Ansarullah movement. Yemen has been mired in civil war since late 2014, when the Houthi group seized control of several northern provinces and forced the Yemeni government to abandon the capital, Sana'a. The Libyan city of Derma has buried thousands of people in mass grave as search teams scour ruins left by devastating floods. The flood started away entire families on Sunday with unexposed vulnerability in the oil-rich country. Health officials have confirmed 11,000 deaths and say 9,000 people are still missing. And UN officials said on Thursday that most casualties could have been avoided if there had been a normal operating meteorological service that could have issued timely warnings. We go live with the summit of the G77 and China. We are going to listen to Mia Mosley, the Prime Minister of Barbados.
60 years of a callous and brutal blockade crippling the economy of this nation, but exacerbated by unacceptable and unjustified declaration by the last presidency of the United States of America of this country as a sponsor of state terrorism. I speak with clarity on this matter because in 1976, an act of terrorism was perpetrated against Cubana Flight 455 that led to 73 people dying as the plane took off from my country, Barbados. No one has ever been held accountable in spite of the mountain of evidence available. And each year, we commemorate the sacrifice of these people. The Cubans, the Guyanese, and the Koreans who lost their lives as victims of the worst aspects of geopolitics. I was only 10 years old when this incident happened, but I will never forget it, as you would appreciate. Nor the moment when El Jefe, President Fidel Castro, came to Barbados to unveil the monument with us. It reinforced the reality of the world in which we live, in which the mighty and the powerful have acted as they wish and accountability. Ironically, we understand the importance of teaching our children how to be fair, and we tell them that each and every day, but we forget it when it comes to the actions of adults and countries. I have come today with a simple message, that the hour is now, and the future is ours to grasp together. It's therefore not surprising that almost 80 years after the establishment of the United Nations, the majority of the world's population are awakening to the reality that our future cannot remain within the shadows of an order that the multilateral institutions of the last century promised us would be a feature of our past and not the bane of our modern existence. Regrettably, what we have seen with the advance of years is a consolidation of an order that the multilateral institutions of the last century promised us would be a feature of our past and not the bane of our modern existence. Regrettably, what we have seen with the advance of years is a consolidation of power and wealth in the hands of an absolute few. And that concentration is likely to be continued as a result of the privatization of knowledge, research, science, and technology. My friends, the lack of access to a level playing field is not only found in matters of high science and technology, but it is as basic as in the access of our students to digital tools to help them participate in the world in which we live, particularly as we were in the pandemic that restricted movement and access to tuition for many of our children. But it goes further for those in Africa who constitute part of the 600 million who do not have access to electricity. As unjust as that scenario is, it is further reflected in the absence of a just industrial strategy for the global south. It is reflected, as we've heard over and over this morning, in the vaccine apartheid, in spite of the clear moral imperative that exists for all of us as human beings to save as many lives as possible, especially in times of global peril. Those few people who lived in the developed world who could sleep easily at night were among the minority of the world's population, confident in the knowledge that their governments would provide to them access to life-saving therapeutics and vaccines. It is perhaps most acutely seen as we fight the climate crisis, not climate change as others continue to call it, but a climate crisis. The people of Dominica and Pakistan and Libya more recently have now come to experience this in real terms. And as I mentioned Libya, may I use this opportunity on behalf of my people and government to express our sympathy and profound regret at the significant loss of life and damage to property that the people of Libya and indeed the people of Morocco have experienced in recent weeks, days. There is no doubt, my friends, that the world in which we live is experiencing unprecedented crises, multiple. And it has done so at a time when mankind has attained more scientific engineering and technological progress than at any other time in history. The difficulty is that, like with all else, inventions can be used either for noble causes or wicked purposes. This means two things. First, our awareness and alertness must be constant. And secondly, it does matter, as we heard from my dear brother Prime Minister Gonzalez this morning, who owns and who controls the technology. So why must we be alert now? Because, like many other temptations from time immemorial, our reliance on things that allow us great convenience and happiness cause us to be easy prey. Easy prey if we do not remember our purpose and our mission. The rise of social media and AI threatens to destabilize at best and enslave at worst billions of people with an ease of conquest that miniaturizes the achievements of the Spanish Armada. Why? Does control and ownership matter as we go into the future? We have seen that in times of scarcity, domestic interests and ethnic relationships have mattered more than fairness and preserving the effectiveness of our multilateral institutions, whose very existence are intended to preserve fairness on a level playing field. And how will we use the science and technology to protect the planet? If that science and technology is only within the province of the wealthy North, how will we avert the loss of life in the South, the inevitable climate migration, and the consequential economic and social implosion that, if persists without course correction, will threaten the very viability of our countries, but perhaps worse, the very existence of the only planet we know that can sustain life. I repeat, commitments made to protect our planet will be empty promises if we do not have the capacity to implement. Lack of access to technology and critical plan have reinforced for us as nation states why it is critical that we collaborate and expose as many of our citizens, including our women, to education, to opportunity, to finance, so that they too may innovate and expand the knowledge base of all of humanity. The absence of policy space for governments allow us or refrain from us being able to pursue our development agenda in the SDGs. The inequitable access to finance, whether from international financial institutions or for fair terms and conditions from the private capital markets for the Global South. All of these impede our ability to provide chances for our people to explore greater opportunities in science and technology. And that is why we have worked with so many to settle the Bridgetown Initiative, or the outcomes of UNCTAD 15, or indeed the outcomes of the Buenos Aires Declaration at CELAC earlier this year, and the commitments both in Paris and Brussels in recent months. My friends, we need to be able to see the expansion of science, technology, and innovation for our people in the developing world, but it will not happen by serendipity. It will only happen if we accept that the hour is now and the future is ours to grasp. And how many more noble and moral imperatives must we remind the world that is there for us to seize, to be the subject of this research? I referred earlier to the Spanish Armada, but it was really the invention of gunpowder and navigational tools that unleashed terror and the quest for dominion for centuries, as we continue to experience. Today's world values knowledge and services, and it is against that background, therefore, we understand that there will be an expansion exponentially of power and a consolidation of wealth for those who have access. But there's a dangerous part, because apart from nation states, the rise of individual titans and the rise of multinational corporations, whose balance sheets dwarf the majority of the world's states, now put us in a precarious position if we do not act with solidarity and with purpose. As nation states, we cannot choose between investment in food and shelter and rebuilding from climate crises, rather than investing in education and technology and science. We need the policy space, we need the finance, and we need the commitment to work together to overcome these hurdles if there is to be a last stand in the name of the majority of the world's people. We need to be able to move to a digital world from an analog world without the fear of being in perpetual subjugation. My friends, the reality is that we need solidarity if we are to secure justice and opportunity. It cannot be business as usual, and we cannot allow division to separate us as it has done for centuries. We must use these science and technological tools as instruments of empowerment and not as tools of oppression if we are to work together for our people. If science and technology is not to be allowed to run amok in an unregulated global environment, we need equally to appreciate what must be done in terms of accountability and transparency by our multilateral institutions and through domestic legal enforcement if we are not to see the undermining of our democracies and the unraveling of progressive opportunities for development. My friends, there can be no more appropriate place, Miguel, for us to have met in this meeting today. Your country has been one of the true beacons of the Global South and of the developing world with respect to innovation through science and technology. With little, you have done much, in spite of 60 years of blockade and terrorism against you and your people in terms of deprivation. As importantly, you have truly walked the walk of anchoring these innovations in a noble mission of service to humanity at large, but equally individuals from villages to towns, as the people of Cuba have helped so many who could not otherwise help themselves. We leave you, therefore, with a clear example that if we are as sovereign states to make a difference, then we can only do so with the majority intent of coming together. The reality is that each of us has taken the time to come here on the eve of the UN General Assembly, because this is testimony to the esteem in which we hold you and this movement of G77 and China. It is an important and timely opportunity to have the discussions that will reinforce solidarity. I say to you simply that frank exchange of views on highly disruptive technologies and the opportunity for empowerment of our people will allow us to determine whether we use them to aid us or hurt us. The hour, my friends, is upon us. And either we work together and multilateralism stays as our hallmark, or indeed we suffer the consequences of being victims. There is far more for us to achieve. To paraphrase our late beloved Comandante Fidel Castro, and I quote, "It does not matter how small you are if you have faith and a plan of action." Let us pledge today, my friends, not because we are here as a matter of form, but with purpose and intent, that we go from here to the General Assembly and to COP, not to be victims of an order that continues to want to subjugate us, but as shapers of a future that humanity most needs when it faces its greatest crisis for planet, for people, for biodiversity. We have the power to seize the future, for it is ours. Thank you.
We were listening to the statements of Miyamoli, the Prime Minister of Barbados. And we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Ana Rosabal. Thank you for watching.